Thank you.
All right, folks. We are going to try and get started. If everybody's got one of these little cards that they want to speak, if you can bring them up or give them to one of the staff members here. Does anybody else have any cards? Got one, Chief? Thank you. All right. We're going to call this meeting to order of the Bridgeton City Council. Welcome, everyone, and if you all will please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. The clerk will now call the roll.
Move away.
Yes. Move away. Mrs. Abram?
Here.
Mr. Fetch?
Here.
Mr. Grimmer?
Here.
Mr. Stein?
Here.
Mrs. Norris? Here. Mr. Purcell? Mr. Sattel?
Here.
Mr. Zimmer?
Here.
We have 7 to 8 council members here tonight. Councilmember Purcell could not join us because of a death in the family. So our sympathies to his wife's family on that. Agenda approval, item D tonight.
Move approval. Second.
Motion's made and seconded for approval of tonight's agenda. Those in favor, or any changes, suggestions, modifications?
For the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table item 10, because the minutes from the last meeting said the staff would gather more info. I'd like to go with option 3 that was presented on the ordinance that said to table the project, reject the bids, put the project in the hands of the newly formed Stormwater Water Committee to discuss further action.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to table item 10, which is authorization of an agreement with Gershenson Construction Company for the Bridgeport Place Drive Stormwater Project. Those in favor, any further comments? Councilmember Graham.
Scott, that's exactly what I was going to do, table it and put it in the Stormwater Committee, so, yeah, I'm along with that. That's good.
Councilmember Avery.
Well, this is already before us, and I think that, you know, we've gotten the information on the cost of that, and approximately, so I don't know why we're sending it to a Stormwater Committee when it's before us, and this has been going on for quite a number of years. So.
Councilmember Brenner, did you have another comment?
Yes, Councilwoman Abrams, I would say that with the 3 options put forth, and there's some other maybe variations on those options, rather than drag out the discussion, this is probably going to be a long meeting anyway. We'll take it in the Stormwater Committee and then make a recommendation at the next and the final reading of the bill. So I think that's a good way to go on this. Okay, one more meeting, 2 weeks. Thank you.
Councilmember.
Yeah, I just want to make a point that we've drummed this out for a number of years now, and but if going to a Stormwater Committee may, you know, encourage some of you to support this, which I think we need to support this. It's been a problem for quite a while.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, well, I don't support it, and I don't have enough information, so I'd like to table it, give it to the Stormwater Committee. I'll vote no, definitely vote no, and I would hope everybody else does that has looked at it. Thanks.
Councilmember Fetch.
Well, what do we, I just heard what, I'm going to be tough tonight, I got a cold, excuse me. But what did Mr. Zimmer, did you make a motion?
The motion was made and seconded.
And a second? Okay, I didn't hear a second. Okay. And I support doing what you said, because when we set up the funds for the engineering of the project, there were some of us that were against it at that time because we had other projects that we wanted to consider. And that's what we're going to try to do, is get people in other areas that have come to council people with stormwater problems, get them on a list so that we can treat everyone equally. Is that properly said about what we did when we started this thing with the engineer? Okay? That's my thoughts anyhow.
Good.
That's why I support tabling it. The committee makes a recommendation.
Councilmember Hahn.
Thank you, Mayor. My reason for wanting to table it is a couple of reasons. At least one of the residents involved came in tonight. He said he's never seen any plans. And at the last council meeting, I asked if it would be possible that the city asked the residents involved in the area to share in the cost, and the mayor at that time said we could ask. And I don't think we've gotten any response on if they were asked, and if so, what they said. That's my reasons for wanting to table it. Thank you.
Councilmember Abrams.
Yeah, in listening to what Mr. Peck said, we already had how we went by this. We did it the way we were supposed to do. The people came to us, we took it to the city engineer, they looked at it to determine what, if it was a bad enough problem, or we should maybe, see if we can address it. What Mr. Fetch wants to do is make a list, and then we're not going to be addressing the priority ones. We're going to be addressing anybody that comes to us with a stormwater problem. So I think we should stick with letting the city engineer that make the decisions on whether we should go forward, or if it's bad enough, let them look at it and see what we need to do about it. No matter what ward it's in, you don't just do it because it's in this ward or that ward or another ward. I think you need to do it by priority regardless of what ward it's in. So,
Councilmember Siddell.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Randy, for mentioning about one of the citizens. You're right, one of the citizens I talked to also before the meeting hadn't seen the drawing. Did go show it to him because the drawings are in our council chamber. Be nice if they could also share that with their other neighbors. So I think it's perfect to take it and table it. I did look at the drawings, as I was told a week ago that the drawings were in there, so I did sit down and study those. I really do like the drawings. I mean, most of you think that I'm totally against this project, but I like how the drawings came out. I like how they're addressing some of the issues on the drawing as far as keeping it where the problem started instead of sticking all the new stuff in the people with the problems. I also think we need to make some changes on the drawing that I will address when we get to the stormwater committee, such as extra easements on how MSD can get to take care of those manholes that are up on top of a hill. So I think it should go to the stormwater committee for it. Thank you.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, just one last thing. I guess your criticality or priorities may not be the same as everybody else's on this board. I'd like to call for the question, please.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to call a question on removal or tabling of item number 10, which is Bill 6214. Those in favor of calling the question?
I'll vote, please.
Roll call. Roll call is requested. Clerk will call roll. This is
Mr.
just...
Judge, this is to call for the...
Vote.
This is just calling on the question. No, this
Yeah,
is just calling the question to end debate, Councilmember Fetch. This isn't a table.
Hey. Hey.
Mr. Grimmer?
Aye.
Mr. Hine?
Aye.
Mrs. Norris? Aye. Mr. Sittell?
Aye.
Mr. Zimmer?
Aye.
Mrs. Abram?
aye.
Mr. Fetch?
Anything possibly done.
That's just time for the question now.
By the vote of 7-0, you call the question. We are now back to the original motion, which is to table item 10, Bill 6214 on tonight's agenda. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Fetch?
Aye.
Mr. Grimmer?
Aye.
Mr. Hine?
Aye.
Mrs. Norris? Aye. Mr. Sittell?
Aye.
Mr. Zimmer?
Aye.
Mrs. Abram?
Well, since that's the only way that it looks like we may get something done, possibly, my vote is aye.
By your vote of 7-0, you have tabled item number 10 on tonight's agenda, which is Bill 6214. Now we need motion to approve tonight's agenda. Councilmember Fetch.
Hey, just before we go on, are we gonna table Bill 6209 tonight. We know we're one vote short, not one vote short, we're one councilman short this evening.
You can make that motion if you like.
No,
but it's not-
okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I have that handy.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor of tonight's agenda as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. We are now down to the public portion of tonight's agenda. Couple of little rules to go over with everybody. We have 2 public hearings on tonight's agenda. So if you were planning to testify about a proposed planned single-family residential unit on Peavy Road, or about a proposal to install a parking lot or to allow for a permitted use on under a special use permit over at 4530 North Lindbergh, you need to come up at those hearings. So what we got then tonight is the rest of the public comment period, and I've got several cards. So what we're going to do is take them up, and I kind of lumped them by category as best I could. So the first ones we're going to call up are on the Bridgeport Place stormwater sewer, which was the item that was just tabled. We have Scott Legg and his Mark Hahn. You two want to come up forward?
We have some pictures we'd like to share with you all.
Okay.
Before and after pictures. You can pass them around, please.
Just give us your name again, Scott, and then...
Sorry, Scott Wade. I've been a member of Bridgeton for 25 years, and in that time I've always mowed my own yard. And for the first 13 years, the yard was perfectly fine. There was no erosion problem at all. The yard, as you can see in the pictures, the yard was green and it was just fine. After the building behind us was put in, there became a huge erosion problem. It's gotten worse and worse since that time. A lot of dirt is run down the hill, it's filled with swell, and there's a lot of ruts in the yard. It's getting harder and harder to mow. Even this year, since February, since I've been mowing, I can tell a marked difference in the erosion and the issue. Also, the mud has filled up the swell at the bottom, so there's, after it rains, there's like, standing water down there. We're very frustrated with what's happened, and we really, we need your help to fix it. We would appreciate any help you can give us.
Thank you. Mark?
Mark Hahn. First of all, thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk to you all. As Scott said, when we built 1994, I think I was the third house. He was either 2 or 3 or something like that on the street. Land was straight, side was up to the fence line, piece of cake to mow, and now every time I try to mow it, I'm afraid I'm going to break my ankle. I mean, it's wavy, ruts. There's so much erosion come down. I've got a drain on the end of my street, on the end of my property, where the water runoff from the top of it, so there will run down through it. So much erosion has come and the swale is moved, doesn't even hit the drain anymore. It goes to the left side. And I know water is supposed to drain through the middle of my yard. I have no problem with that. I sent some pictures around. One of them shows the fence line on the back of my house. And if you take a ruler from the bottom of the fence line down to where my yard is down, I've lost anywhere from 7, 9, 10 inches. And it continued down the hill. And it's wavy. There's pictures up there. There's whole tree roots that thick that have been uncovered by the erosion. Now that's not right. That can't happen. And for 13 years, we had no problem until something was built behind us, and nobody blamed anybody. Everybody did everything right. But when that property was built, it caused a lot of water runoff. I've heard people say, well, it's just natural. Well, if it's just natural runoff, why are our 2 houses the only one on our street affected? I mean, it's, our property value's gone down. Bridgeton, we don't want to leave. My wife's been here 58 years. I've been here 30 years. I've been involved in the community, the patio and stuff. It's a great community. We do not want to leave. It's a caring community. Neighbors help one another. Well, Scott and I can't help one another on this. It's how we can't do it. So we're here asking you for your help. And we would rather not be here, believe me. We wish we could do it ourselves, but we can't do it. And if you haven't walked my yard, the Scott's yard, I invite you to get a hold of me. I'm retired, I'll meet you anywhere. I'll cancel a golf game if I have to. All right? But if you haven't been there, come walk through our yard with us. Just don't stand on the street or sit here and say, I'm not going to vote for it. Come see it before you make a decision. If your decision's no after that, that's fine. Okay? But we can't do it, and we're asking for your help to fix this. Because of the problem's there, and it's only going to keep getting worse. It's not going to fix itself. So we're just here to ask for your help, and we would appreciate it, any help that you can give us, because it's a mess, and it's just going to continue to get worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next up, Susan Tillman. Ms. Tillman.
Hi, I'm Susan Tillman. Thank you for inviting me. And I just want to say that I'm here today in regards to the noise ordinance and the peace ordinance. Thank you to Scott Zimmer. He was very quick to help me in this situation, along with the chief of police. So thank you for this community for acting so quickly. We had new neighbors move in behind my mom in Bridgeton, and I'm a long life resident of Bridgeton myself as well. And they were playing very loud, vulgar music. And so it wasn't just music. It was very vulgar. A lot of cussing and a lot of other things as well. The ordinance is, I'm asking for you to review the ordinance. It's very vague as far as the peace disturbance, just says loud noise. And then it really doesn't have any type of hours, or in the noise ordinance, it actually has between 11 and 8 a.m. And then it also has 50 feet from the building. And again, there's other stipulations that are more for a commercial type atmosphere. So I would like to really just ask for you all to review the peace disturbance ordinance. Maybe adding in music, vulgarity, and then I would like to, submit shortening that 11 p.m. I think that's very late for a lot of people in Bridgeton with kids and the elderly that all live here. So, it's my understanding that through the peace disturbance section, it's section 205.300, that it still applies, that 50 feet, and then the loud music still applies to that. But I still think it's just really unclear whether or not that they would be ticketed for that. So.
Thank you. Appreciate you calling that to our attention. All right, the next I've got 5 cards all on the proposed rezoning project over in Harmony. So what I would ask is, because we have, I'm sure, the bulk of the crowd here tonight about this issue, just keep your comments concise. Don't be repetitive with other people, and we'll get through all this. So the first card I've got up is Ken Poteet. Is Mr. Poteet here? Go. Thank you.
I'm Ken Poteet, 1187 Old Valley Lane. I live directly adjoining the piece of property that's up for rezoning.
I need to come a little closer to the mic.
We just purchased our property just last year. It's a rundown piece of property, and we've done a lot of work, spent a lot of money on it. And we didn't know that this was going to be zoned, try to be zoned commercial. We thought it was going to be residential. And we've got a lot of water problem in the back of our lot. When it rains, about a fourth of our lot gets covered with water now. And if they have more asphalt, it's going to push more water back that way, it's not going to be good. So we certainly would like to see that stay as residential instead of commercial.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Petit. Thanks for coming in and improving your property. Ron Holland. Mr. Holland.
Yeah, my name is Ron Holland, and I'm not going to reiterate the things that we've already talked about, because I think you have a picture of that. But I would like to talk about you all. People that are sitting in each one of these chairs, all the councilmen, councilwomen, and the mayor, were elected by the residents of the city of Bridgeton, not by the business owners. Now, there might be a business owner that is a resident, but I think it's fair to say you were elected by the residents. And they elected you because they trust you to make decisions that are good for them and the city. And the decision to rezone that into commercial, for all the other reasons we talked about, is not a good decision. So we would ask for all of you to support our council people, Bert Kutz and Randy Hine, in voting no on this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Next up, Veronica Young. Ms. Young. Good evening.
I am from here.
You probably need to pull it down so we can hear you. Thank you. You're fine.
My husband and I bought our house in March of 2018, and we live at 3775 Harmony. So just to put that into perspective, we are the very first home on the left, where this lot will pretty much be across the street from us. If this lot becomes a business lot, it's going to increase traffic further up on the road and even more on Melody. That spot is a rather big bus stop for the storage there as well. And we bought this home with the intention of raising a family. And with that being said, if this does go through, the increase of traffic and public access makes it very dangerous and unsafe for our children. Not to mention the concern for privacy. When you build a multi-story building in that spot, you open up homes around it to being able to be looked into from the top story. And with the break-ins that we already have and in our nearby area, giving that public access makes it even worse. And we aren't even really sure why Bridgeton needs more commercial buildings when across the street we have 4 huge ones that are vacant and have been vacant for some time. So we're not sure why we need to build more. And to be 110% honest, we don't really think that this should go through. We would probably just sell our house before it plummets our property value.
Thank you for your comments. Kathy, is it McGurky? At 3813? Sorry, I can't read it.
All right.
I'm not the best at handwriting.
I'm Kathy McKenzie. We live at 3813 DePaul Meadows. We've been Bridgeton residents for about 28 years. We were Carrollton residents before we moved to DePaul Meadows. I have a couple concerns about the rezoning proposal. Adding a 7th or even an 8th cut-in at that corner of Harmony and Melody in 100 yards will further impact the traffic, which is pretty dangerous already, with people trying to pull in and out of the credit union all the time. The environmental impact to our subdivision will also be affected. Our subdivision has a history of flooding, which happened again last month. An additional development with concrete, asphalt, etc. will also impact that area, as our new neighbor spoke about. We realize that this developer wants to make money from his purchase of the property, but it was a mistake that he bought a lot that was and always has been zoned for residential use. He should have known what he was buying. It's not our fault he made a bad purchase. Our recommendation is that you look at some of the other properties that are vacant in the Bridgeton area. Thank you.
Thank you. Last card is from Ms. Fisher, Teresa Fisher.
please. Thank you. Well, here I am once again. All right, there's way too many issues. All of you guys are very aware of. There's too many issues. Why this should not go through. All right, your people have spoken. Every single person that I've talked to is opposed to this. And they all have legitimate reasons to be opposed to this. And my question to my council members were, why? And I have only got two answers. Why? Is because of the developer. Why? Is because who would want to build two homes there? Well, I have 27 points. 27 valid points to address all of you with, to tell you how dangerous it is and how people. This only took me 1 hour to get out. We were only people who are outside. Only 1 hour. And these are people which are opposed. Okay? Gave them a choice if they were for it. This turnout is to tell you that this can't happen. This parcel is too dangerous. It's way too dangerous. If you drove it, if you would understand it, it is dangerous. It's dangerous for everybody who will be coming to businesses. It's dangerous for the residents. It's dangerous for flooding. It's dangerous for our children. It's dangerous every way you look at it. I can't even imagine the people that we voted in would vote for this to go through. I hope that you guys understand that this should be resident, should stay resident. We bought our properties for it to be resident, and all of us probably would not have bought our land here in Bridgeton if we knew that was worth it. And it will cause more flooding. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I'll probably be up here if you guys pass it because of flooded properties. I don't have really much else to say because you guys have really drained me on the situation. All I know is that have any of our council members thought, like I have, and asked people? Have you guys asked your residents? Have you? Yeah? Okay, so your residents are all saying, we don't want this to happen. And if you guys walk in, like I did, dozens of neighborhoods, you guys would know. Okay? You guys know what's best to vote here. Vote for really what for, not money. For your citizens. Thank you.
Comments are noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right, that's all the cards we have tonight. Does anybody else have one last comment?
They are still,
Well,
look at all of us.
your time's kind of up. Nobody else turned in a card. I get you. Okay, we will move on then to, we're going to close the public portion and move to approval of the minutes of the July 17, 2019 meeting.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for approval of the minutes from July 17th. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Announcements. I have a couple of announcements. We have our new finance director with us tonight, Christine Broadus. Christine? Waves, everybody.
You're just getting up to walk out.
Christine's been with us about 2.5 weeks now. We also have, I'm very pleased to introduce two of our new police officers to the city of Bridgeton. I'll let the chief do the introductions.
Come on, guy. I'd like to introduce Officers Zachary Cope and Joshua Forbes. They graduated from the Eastern Missouri Police Academy on July the 11th, and so far they have been a tremendous addition.
I think you'll find, as well as many in this room, they're very supportive of the police department here in the city of Bridgeton. We have a very safe community thanks to the efforts of these young men and the others who are on current staff. So we welcome them as an addition. Councilmember Hine, did you have an issue?
The minutes. I had my light on and you went.
Oh, sorry, was there a correction that you want to come back to?
Please, if we could, friendly amendment on page 7, 1, 2, 3, third sentence down, third paragraph down. Mr. Hine asked if the resident would share any of the costs. I want to add, and I think you'll agree, Mayor Briggs said they could ask. Okay, all right, thank you.
Is that all right for a friendly amendment?
Yeah, so moved.
All right, we will amend the minutes that way. Sorry, I didn't catch that. Appointments. You have before you 3 appointments to various boards and commissions of the city of Bridgeton. I think the individuals named there will do a fine job. Is there a motion to approve?
So move approve the list.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for approval of tonight's. There are 2. You've got a copy. For the benefit of the audience, it is for the Police Commission to Adam Donahue from Ward 3. On the Housing Board of Appeal is Barry Palmer from Ward 1. And from the Finance Commission is Judy Pickett, also from Ward 1. So, motion's made and seconded. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. We now have a presentation tonight from our auditors. Mike Williams, would you like to come forward, Mike?
Thank you very much. My name is Mike Williams. I am a partner at Wilshire Roofing Company, CPA, and we recently issued audit reports with something like this. And so, what I thought I'd just talk through a few of the items in here to give you an overview, some general information. If you have questions we go through, or questions at the end is fine too. I'm also with Abby Swatsky, a CPA manager, who's in charge of all the detailed work. So if you have any hard questions, I'll handle those. But so again, this is the audit report. It's sometimes called the comprehensive annual financial report. It contains audited financial statements, audited notes, our letter, things like that. And then just to get into it a little bit, that's table of contents. The first part of the report is the introductory section. And this introductory section starts off with the transmittal letter. It's information from the city. And I think this is good. It gives information about the profile of the city, economic condition, major initiatives, long-term financial planning. A lot of the information related to the audit, but it's in narrative form, so you can kind of figure out what the financial statements are talking about. So I think that's good. After that, then there's some information on the principal officials and org chart. And then after that, then there's on Roman numeral page 8, there's a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting. And I'd like to point this out that I think that demonstrates the city's full disclosure, accountability, things like that. So congratulations to the city on achieving that award on its financials. After that, then there's a financial section. And the first part of that is the independent auditor's report. It's on our letterhead dated June 18th. And there's some, I think, important parts in here. The first part talks about what we've audited. It does talk about management's responsibility too, because the information in the audit report is responsibility of management, management's assertion, and it's our job to audit. And then on page 2, the opinion paragraph says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. And so that's good. There's no modifications or qualifications to that report. It's called a clean opinion. And similar to what you had before, I think that's important. After that, then there's a pretty good section on management's discussion and analysis. So there's more analysis of more detailed information in the report. But there is a summary on pages 8 and 9 of all the funds working together on a full accrual basis. So I think it provides a big picture perspective on the city's finances. Excuse me, I think I got a cold too. The total assets reported at December 30th, 2018 were around $115 million. Total liabilities around $48 million. Then there's some other deferred inflows and outflows, but so the difference in between the assets, which is what you own, and the liabilities, which are things that are owed by the city, is called net position on this report. And so that's supposed to be the big picture overall net financial position of the city. So the net financial position of the city was around $68,331,000, again in December 31st. And compared to that to the prior year, there was an increase of about $617,000. So overall, big picture perspective is an increase in the financial position. The next page in is a summary of the revenues and expenses. So the revenues for overall city funds on a full accrual basis is around $24,004,000. And total expenses around $23,387,000. There's some increases in revenues by 3.4%, total increase in expenses by about 3.8%. And again, it reconciles to the amount of net financial position which agrees to the previous page. So again, the total revenues, expenses, and improvement in overall net position. So that's kind of the big picture numbers of all the funds. There's a more detailed information here of all the individual funds that you see in the budget and other reports that you get from the city. But I do like to review the general fund information. It's the main operating fund of the city. So the general funds report on page 17, the total assets are around $3,795,000. There's liability and deferred amounts also, and then there's also a total fund balance listed on that page for general fund of around $2,349,000. And so sometimes you want to know how much your fund balance is when you're doing your budget or you're looking at available resources. Now, the total amount that you have actually isn't totally available for expenditure. Some of that is noted as non-expendable for inventory, some of it's restricted, some committed, and some assigned. So the unassigned amounts are the amounts that are available for expenditure, $10,401,000. So that's the general fund, and then there's other funds on the page that are also listed. A couple pages after that, then there's a summary of the revenues and expenditures. So again, it has all the funds, the major funds listed on this page. Total revenues at the top of the page for the general fund, around $16,850,000. Total expenditures around $16,040,000. So more revenues than expenses for the year. So overall, it does show the net increase in the fund balance for the general fund around $229,000. So that's the final increase in the general fund. So that's some of the funds. There's also information in here about the Central Garage Fund. The other more significant fund is the Pension Trust Fund. So the amount of assets in the Pension Trust Fund is disclosed around $26 million. That's the investments that the pension has. There's also a listing of the amount of contributions and expenses in the pension fund. So overall, the pension fund decreased about $2,170,000 for the year. After that, then there's a lot of notes to the financial statements and the accounting policies. A lot of those are similar to what's been reported in previous years. There's more detailed information on cash and investments, capital assets. I think capital assets are important. Those are fixed assets. There's large amounts on here, and then once you buy a fixed asset, buildings, infrastructure, things like that, it starts to depreciate. So the balance in the capital assets at the end of 2018 is about $180 million. Also disclosed are the long-term liabilities, and the city also has various liabilities for certificates of participation for the building and the parks improvements, and there's also tax increment financing notes and bonds. And overall, that's like a mortgage. So this shows your mortgage decreased, the long-term debt of the city decreased for the year related to those items. So I think that's important. Let's see, there's some other general information in here, and then there's also more detailed disclosures about the actuarial valuations for the pension plan. And there's one of the items for the pension plan is on page 42. It discloses the overall amounts in the pension plan, the actuarial liability related to the pension plan, and so the difference between those. So the liability reported is about $46 million. The balance in the fund available to pay that is around $26 million. So there's a net pension liability reported of about $20 million. After that, then there's other general information about in the notes. And so that's through page 46, and the remaining 50-some pages or so, this is a lot more detailed information on budget to actual information. One of the first things, well, I guess I'll just mention page 47. For instance, is the budget to actual information for the general fund. So pick on the general fund again, since it's the main fund of the city. Shows the total revenues are over budget for the year, about $9,300. And expenses are under budget by about $97,000. So that's generally the right way you want to be, over budget, a little bit on revenues, under budget expenses. So that type of information is, like I said, for the rest of the report. And then the last 40 pages or so are 10 years statistical information trends, so you can see changes from all the previous years. So that's really what I was going to talk about on this report. That's the comprehensive annual financial report. And then the other two reports briefly are, they look like this. One of them is called a report on internal controls and compliance. And I think this is important. This is supposed to communicate to users of the financial statements that auditors also look at internal controls, policies and procedures, things like that. And we also review compliance with statutes, grants, those types of items. And if there were to be significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, those types of things would have to be reported in this report, like bigger items. And I think the last sentence of the second paragraph on page 2 summarizes stuff, says the results of our test disclose no instances of non-compliance as required to be reported. So no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. And that brings us to our last report then. So this is just a summary of some of the general information about an audit. And then there's adjustments listed. And then we also list 5 comments that are and recommendations for the city. So these aren't significant items, they're just items that we come up with for improvements for management. So like I said, there's 5 of them. The first one has to do with the documentation on credit cards. The second one has to do with additional receipts at parks. The third one has to do with just reporting some more information on the general ledger, the accounting amounts. Fourth one is related to improvements on some of the requirements. And then the 5th one is additional policy and procedure documentation. This documentation of SOP standard operating procedures. So that's the report. We've got a clean opinion on the audit, and no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, and a few comments of the recommendations. So, happy to take any questions or comments related to anything.
Questions or comments, Mr. Williams? Overall, a very good report. For the benefit of the audience, that's how our finances go. And the last part that was really important was expenditures are less than what we take in revenues. That's great. So, thank you.
I know it's a lot to go over. If you have any questions, the numbers on here.
Councilmember Sattel.
Yes, is this report something we can put on our website, and can we also add the current budget to that too?
I was just going to add that this is on the city's website, the annual report, so if any residents want to go check it out, the full comprehensive annual report's there.
Councilmember Hine.
Is this your first audit with our city?
This is our second audit with the city, but our first presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Further comments or questions? Thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. It's good news for us. Okay, we are going to recess, as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting. We have 2 public hearings tonight. So we will recess for the first public hearing, which is a petition for rezoning of approximately 6.03 acres of land at 3170 PB Road from R2 single-family dwelling to a PUD planned single-family residential unit. Mr. Wright, would you like to make a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor stated, this is a request for rezoning to PUD from R2. This is a twofold request. However, since it includes a rezoning request to PUD, but also preliminary plan approval for subdivision of the property. But since the preliminary plan cannot be considered until the PUD zoning would be approved, that would take place at a future council meeting. So tonight we're only talking about application 19-PZ-08. A little background for our audience as well. PUD planned residential unit development, the type of planned development that may be requested when the property is at least 2 acres in size, and it's difficult to meet established zoning regulations due to either unusual lot size, configuration of lot, topography, things of this nature. The intent of the PUD zoning is to permit desirable housing concepts and encourage innovative single-family residential design. As stated, the second component will take place at a future council meeting. The proposal is for a 24-lot detached single-family residential development. I've got the overall layout here with one new street accessing Fifi Road and then terminating into cul-de-sacs with stormwater stormwater facilities to the southeast on the property. Again, just for the benefit of our audience as well, the review steps for this type of project: the Planning Commission is the first stop. They hold a public hearing. Property owners were notified. That public hearing was held on July 8th, and the Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 7-0. Then City Council holds a public hearing, that's this evening, and then makes the final determination to approve or disapprove. Again, as stated, the preliminary plan process will be considered at a future council meeting date that has already gone before Planning Commission. The property itself is zoned R2, single-family dwelling district. It is just over 6 acres. There is a single-family dwelling on it. It is surrounded by R2 zoning to the north on TP Road, as well as to the east, which is Matthews Park, the city park. To the north is R4 zoning district with single-family dwellings on PP Road. A little bit more to the north is R6, and that's a condominium development behind an existing commercial development directly across from PP, which is zoned B5H, a planned commercial district. And then this property is also near the border with Maryland Heights to the south, with R5 zoning and R6 zoning in Maryland Heights. There's a residential care facility directly across Ayrshire from it, and a condominium development across PP. I have a few excerpts from the comprehensive plan. These are from the housing and neighborhood stability section of the comprehensive plan. I've just highlighted a few goals, objectives, and implementation strategies that apply to this proposal. And the proposal is consistent with these items. One, overall goal to provide for housing densities and types that meet market demand while maintaining existing neighborhoods, offering rehabilitation of deteriorating areas, and increasing the confidence to invest in residential properties. One of the objectives, some of the objectives listed in this section are to promote high-quality, long-lasting future single-family residential development and encourage well-planned, higher-density residential development. Some of the implementation strategies related to these goals and objectives are to provide areas for single-family subdivision development near existing single-family development, promoting continuity between residential uses and accommodating the latest trends in residential development. This is a screenshot of the future land use map from the comprehensive plan. You can see the property there, the far south end of Fifi. It is depicted as single-family residential, and the proposal is consistent with the future land use map as well. And it is also, the density proposed is consistent with the density recommended in the comprehensive plan. I have a few pictures of the site in case anyone has been over there. This is looking at the site. This picture was taken from the commercial development across from Fifi. This is looking north on Fifi towards, there's an intersection just north of the site, the intersection of Fifi Road and Roger Williams Drive. It's a three-way stop. This is the picture of this single-family dwelling on the property. And this is just another view looking to the south on Fifi Road. You can see the intersection with Fifi and Roger Williams Drive. And since it's adjacent to this parcel, there's just a picture of Matthews Park to the east of the site. You can see the surrounding land uses, and this is just a different aerial view from Google Maps. You can see the single family along Fifi and the park to the, this is looking east, and you can see the development in Maryland Heights on the right-hand side of the picture. A few items related to planned unit development zoning. It may be permitted on tracts of land that are unable to meet established zoning regulations. The property is currently zoned R2. To redevelop this site under the current R2 zoning, it would be difficult to develop at the densities recommended in the comprehensive plan due to the existing dimensions and configuration of the site would limit the number of lots. The PUD zoning allows for flexibility necessary to redevelop the property. While the PUD allows for densities of up to 14 units per acre, the proposed development would be developed at a density of 4 units per acre with an average lot size of just over 6,000 square feet. closer to 11,000 square feet when considering the entire site. The proposed density is consistent with surrounding density of other residential developments in the area, as well as other PUD developments in Bridgeton. One thing I wanted to mention, through the PUD zoning, council may grant exceptions to certain requirements in the subdivision regulations and in the zoning ordinance. The proposed new street would be located approximately 160 feet from the nearest intersection to the northeast. The subdivision regulations require that the new street, when it's proposed to intersect with a collector road, which PP is, it must be either directly across from an existing street or at least 300 feet from the nearest intersection. The applicant has requested that this requirement be waived through the PUD process. I included a review of this request in the staff report. We discussed it among staff and the Public Works Department, and we think that this would be reasonable because it's 24 lots, which would not generate a significant amount of traffic, and this intersection is controlled by a three-way stop sign, so there's already safety measures in place at this intersection. Another thing I wanted to mention, we talked to the developer when they first met with us on this project, that since it's adjacent to a city park, Matthews Park, and currently we're going through a grant process to implement some proposed improvements to Matthews Park. We asked them to include and to set aside an area extending from the cul-de-sac, the proposed sidewalk from the cul-de-sac, that would provide a pedestrian path to Matthews Park, and they have included that. This is a good opportunity to allow for some connectivity and hopefully increase activity in Matthews Park, which will hopefully be updated and improved in the near future. I just have some other slides showing the preliminary plan, but I'll leave that to the developer to explain. But I have them here if necessary. That's all I have.
Very good. Questions of council, Mr. Greitens? Councilmember Zimmer.
The question came up on one of the meetings on the path going to the park. Is the creek on their property, and are they providing a bridge, or are they going to expect us to pay for a bridge?
Sure. The developer might have more specific information on that. When you look at the contours, it's very close to the boundary. When we looked at it, we thought the most important thing at the moment was to ensure that we had that land set aside in place on the plan, so that way they would be required to develop a path. In terms of where a bridge, or if it could be addressed through a culvert or something, I think we would have to work out those details at a later date, but it looks like it follows the property line pretty closely.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hahn.
Last week at the Parks presentation on renovation of Matthews Park, due to the fact that the restrooms in Matthews Park are hooked up to septic, I believe it was told to us that the developer has agreed to possibly let the city connect to the sewer in the development, the sewer line. Are you aware of that? Or?
I don't have the details of that. I know that they are extending a sanitary line to develop the site for the 24-lot subdivision. In terms of details of an agreement, they might have more information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sattel.
Mine's also about MSD. I saw how the line's going. Go back to the other picture you got up there a minute ago. The bigger
This one?
No, the one with all the details. This one here. So if you zoom in on the right side, you can follow the sanitary sewer lines up to the common ground by the pathway right there that's in the common ground. Is it possible to make sure that also that common ground area where the pathway is also an MSD easement all the way to the northern end of the property line, so that the sewer line could be extended to the rest of these residential homes if they ever decided they had to? I talked to some, they're all on septics also up that valley, so it's just an easement to that common ground. I mean, I see where the manhole changes directions, which is probably where, like Randy mentioned about somebody connecting for ours, we're probably connecting to that manhole also. I think we should continue that MSD easement all the way to that northern property line.
Just an MSD easement for future.
For future,
potential
because all the rest of
future
these property, I'm sure that it's being pipe sized for everybody upstream, just like they would any other time, okay? All future development, if ever all these other lots become another PUD, it's gotta be large enough to handle all the properties that are further up this upstream, uphill from that. So make sure that, it doesn't show the exact easements on here for MSD on this drawing, but let's make sure it goes all the way to the northern tip end, so that if something's added for future development, instead of like the current one, they're having to go way down to Maryland Heights to grab, to get a hold of it, right now. So I just want to make sure that's on the plans, and other than that, I pretty well like the layout. Thank you.
Further comments or questions from council to Mr. Braggins? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Braggins. Is the petitioner here?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Give us your name and address, please.
And council. My name is Steve Gower. I represent Pinnacle Land Development. Pinnacle is a Butteridge trading entity, and Butteridge has been in business for developing property in the area for approximately 22 years. We've been doing business in St. Louis for well over 50 years. Zach does such a great job in presenting the plan. I don't have a lot to add, just a few things I'd like to touch on and try to answer any of the questions that did arise. We would, of course, agree to grant an easement along the boundary line, the county boundary line of Matthews Park, all the way up to what would be our far northern boundary there. That's no issue whatsoever. With regards to the trail access, again, as Zach talked about, that small tributary that runs along the county boundary, it barely has a bottom to it, which is a relatively small drainage area. We haven't discussed any issues with building a bridge or anything like that. We plan on connecting it as close down to the property line and bringing an easement over that trail area. That's as far as we've gone with any planning on that. The stormwater, I'd like to touch on a little bit. We'll be building a storm detention facility with MSD water quality up to their current new, which are more stringent regulations in the southwest portion of the property. That'll include a bioretention area, and then it would discharge near the southeast portion of the site. The sanitary sewer, we have to connect to approximately 350, 400 feet off-site on the National Healthcare's property to where the current gravity main is, and extend that up to Ayrshire and across Ayrshire. There is existing easements in place to do that. So the sewer will be right there on the corner for the city to connect to or to the parks facilities that are situated. I really don't have anything else. Like I said, I think Zach touched on most of everything. Certainly be happy to answer any more questions you may have.
Any questions, Mr. Gower? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll open it up to the public. Anyone in support wishes to speak on this project? I see no hands. Anyone in opposition to the project? Seeing none, we'll close this hearing and move on to our next hearing, which is a petition to amend the B5R at 4530 North Lindbergh Boulevard, planned commercial district to add automobile parking lots and garages. Mr. Wright.
As the mayor stated, this is a request to amend the district regulations for the B5R district. I have a map showing the zoning of the property itself and surrounding zoning. The B5R district was created in 2013 when the property was rezoned to a planned commercial district. It includes two parcels. One is the parcel with the 11-story tower on it, and then also the 4-level parking garage that is highlighted here in red. And then the parcel to the south, it has a 2-story building on it that was most recently used for a hotel. As I mentioned in the staff report, both properties are currently under renovation, so neither are operating at the moment. A special use permit for the tower was approved in 2017 to allow multifamily residential redevelopment of the tower. That's been put on hold for now. The surrounding zoning to the north and northeast is zone M3T, a planned commercial district. This is the Hunter Engineering Campus. Also to the east. To the south is M1, and this is the interchange with Interstate 70 and North Lindbergh. And to the west, we have B5V. This is the property that's currently under redevelopment for the Leonardo DRS site. I have a few pictures of the property. This just shows the tower, and in the very forefront of the tower is the 4-story parking garage. This shows it a little bit better. I'll go back to the zoning map. The B5R district currently allows lodging establishments, offices, and restaurants. And it allows multifamily dwellings as a special use. The applicant is interested in using a portion of the existing 4-story parking garage for paid parking due to the proximity to the airport. Their intent would be to use a portion of it for basically a park and fly type of business. When we discussed this proposal, I informed them that the main route the city would want to see them do it is by adding this as a special use permit, so that's why it was drafted that way. So if this text amendment were to be approved, they would, and they wanted to move forward with that project, they'd have to come back and apply for a special use permit. And at that time, then the planning commission staff, the planning commission, and city council would have the opportunity to, if they were in favor of the idea, to attach any conditions of operation to it related to either the number of parking spaces, security, things like that. So the current request is to amend the B5R. If it were to be approved, the proposal would not be allowed. Like I said, they could come back through a special use permit. So that's all.
Questions, Mr. Gregg? So once again, this is a text amendment to this.
Correct.
Councilmember Hahn.
Did I read that they only want to have 80 spaces available?
That's what they indicated. Which I'm glad you mentioned that. I included an analysis in the report about the parking requirements. So when I ran the calculations for the required parking for the 2-story hotel and the required parking for the proposed multifamily redevelopment of the tower, which again isn't currently moving forward, but if that were to be redeveloped as they originally planned, there would be enough parking available for both the multifamily residential and the hotel to meet the parking requirements in the ordinance and have approximately 80 parking spaces in excess. So that's kind of where the 80 came from, is that there would be 80 extra parking spaces that they wouldn't need to comply with parking. So if this amendment were to be approved and they pursued a special use permit, I think at that time we would want to really nail down how many parking spaces we would limit this type of use to. But again, the 11-story tower is currently vacant, and I don't know when that's going to be completed. But we still want to address the number of parking spaces for our parking garage, because we wouldn't want to make it so that the developer can't redevelop the tower as proposed. So we'd have to be careful with that when it came through special use permit, if this were to be approved.
Would the spaces be available on all 4 levels, or would they just be limited to one level, or how would that be controlled? I don't.
Sure, and again, that would be that would be a good example of one of the details we'd have to work out if they pursue a special use
Okay.
permit, and getting more details from them on how they want to operate their business plan. We don't have that yet, simply because they were pursuing a text amendment to see if council, if the city would be open to this type of use here, but at the special use permit review time would be when we would not only get into all those details at our meetings, but also require them to submit those details as well.
And the parking would only be in the garage, not on the ground spaces?
I think we want to limit it to the garage.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Councilmember Phil.
Yes, of those 80, that represents what, of the total in the parking garage? How many totals? Are 320, so it's really just one floor work? I'm just asking how many total is there on the whole parking garage?
Sure, approximately 250 parking garage.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a percentage here of what you're talking about. Thank you.
Further comments or questions of Mr. Graves? Seeing none, thank you, Zach. Is the petitioner here?
My name is Jim Town, I'm the attorney. Mr. Patel, who's the petitioner, is also here.
Thank you. Give us your address, please, sir.
825 Maryville Center Drive, County Country, Missouri, 63017.
Very good. Thank you. You want to proceed with your presentation? You want to discuss?
I think that Mr. Grimes has presented it appropriately. What I'm here to do is answer any questions you might have, certainly in terms of how we're going to operate the parking structure, the number of spaces, and any question you might have about the tower and its rehabilitation.
Okay. Councilmember Avery.
Yes, we approved that quite a while ago for you to have those apartments. Are you ever going to do anything with that, or
Yes,
are you not?
About a month ago, and there was some confusion between the city and the owners of the property. And the problem that we found out that was most problematic was that the drawings were, although the configuration of the units, the living units were appropriate, there were some specific things that the city wanted, and there was confusion on why they weren't put on there by the drafter of that drawing. It is unbeknownst to me, because he is a licensed architect and he didn't follow the appropriate procedure and the components for his drawing, so we are using somebody different to get the drawing into compliance, and then we will present them back through the city for approval and try to get that project going.
So you do have somebody working on
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
Eventually, you're going to do something.
Yes, ma'am. And most recently, just so the council knows, we had on the 4th of July, we had a pipe break. Actually, it was a bolt that broke on the sprinkler system, the fire sprinkler system, and it was in a stack, so one of the two bolts that holds the collar on this pipe together, one side broke, and water was rushing out. So Mr. Patel arrived on the scene, fire was already there, and they told him, okay, you can't go in, it's dangerous, and all that. They were gonna shut the water down, and we were like, go on home, we'll shut the water down, so we felt we're under control. It had only run for maybe about a half hour or so. And when they came back in the morning, it was still running, so apparently something went wrong and tried to shut it down. It never got shut down, so we have a massive problem that we are working through trying to get that reestablished. And fortunately, the plan is to do basically a gut on the inside anyway, so all the stuff that's damaged is coming out and going to be removed. There'll be new electric, new plumbing, it's all going to be reconfigured. So although we have a small catastrophe now, that's going to be resolved going forward.
And are you going to have a hotel there anymore, a part of it, or?
No, ma'am, it's all in the tower, and then the hotel is, actually the hotel has been covered by Ramada. They've put their brand on it, and we're trying to get that open. And we were very close until we had the electric problem. And unfortunately, one of the trunks is in the tower building, so we had the electrical contractors come out and look at that, and we're waiting to get to go ahead to separate that out and get the hotel up and going and get that lit up and move it forward also.
Okay.
Further comments or questions from council? Seeing none, there is a concern though about the property. I will tell you that, it's kind of been there for a while.
Yes, sir.
And nothing seems to be happening with it.
Well, we're trying to make that happen, and I'll give you a little bit of my background. I'm a municipal judge and prosecutor. And what I have, when people come into my court, when it comes to housing issues and property issues, the name of the game is compliance. So when I have clients come in who have a housing or a property issue, my response to them, we are talking about compliance, because that's what everybody's looking for. So I was brought into this project on, I think April 13th. I remember that day because I was doing taxes and I was happy to get a call that I could get away from that and not write that check right away. And so since that time, part of my role as an attorney is also a counselor at law. So a lot of times when we're in the municipal side and we've got problems, it's more counseling than legal work. So I've tried to get the Patels and their partners in these projects to understand what direction we need to go. And when we met with building and fire, my comments to them were, please give us a list of everything that you are requiring us to do in order to get up and running it according to your standards. And we will do that, and since we've had those conversations, we have checked all the boxes and gotten everything in compliance, and that's what we intend to do going forward.
Councilmember Avery.
Okay, I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any partial ownership in this?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
No.
that's all.
Further comments or questions? See none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. All right, we'll open it up then to the public. If anyone here in support would like to testify in support of this project? Seeing none. If anyone here would like to speak in opposition to the project? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the hearing, and we will go back to the regular schedule of the council meeting, which is down to item 4, Councilmember Hine.
Thank you, and I want to move for first reading for liquor license application for Charles E. Manninger, doing business as Garland Wines at 13761 St. Charles Rock Road, Suite 120. Juan Duran, Managing Officer.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for first reading of package liquor license for 13761 Suite 120 on Garland Wines. Councilmember Hine?
This is for warehousing only, wine, and I'd like to move it to table at this time.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to table. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. We're down to perfection of bills. Councilmember Avery, item 5.
Mayor, I would like to make a motion to remove this bill from the table. Second.
Motion's made and seconded to remove Bill 6209 from the table. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Councilmember Avery.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we send this back to planning and zoning, and for them to look at and reconsider. Now I'd like to turn it over to the mayor, I think, and let him.
All right. I will also rely on the city attorney. One of the issues that came up.
I didn't second, but
I'm sorry.
Second.
One of the issues that has come up on this particular project is that it came through planning and zoning, and we had 7 members on planning and zoning. The petitioner at planning and zoning, the vote on this was 5 to 2. The petitioner and some on council thought that a 5 to 2 vote means that it went forward with an affirmative recommendation. That is not the case. Council, at the request of Councilmember Fetch, reviewed case law on the matter, and apparently there was a case that said because our charter, the city charter of Bridgeton, requires 13 people on the Planning and Zoning Commission, that you have to have a majority of the 13, not a majority of those who currently serve. So in this particular case, it requires 7. This did not come forward with a 7-vote majority. However, that was not known to the petitioner, nor to some of the other councilmen. So researching that is why the feeling is, in fairness, is to kick it back to planning and zoning. let them deliberate on it, and then submit back, if they choose, back to the city council. I'll turn over to the counselor. There was a court case on this, correct?
With respect to what you mentioned, yes, sir. Brady v. Zitch is the name of the case, which says that when using the language, a majority of all of the members of, in this case, the Planning Commission, that means the full authorized body, and that's 13, and so a majority of 13 is 7. So in order to have an affirmative recommendation from the Planning Commission, it requires a supermajority, 6 votes. The consequence of not having 7 affirmative votes is it requires. And so I think that there have been some appointments to the Planning Commission in the interim, and so that's, I think, perhaps what's motivating the vote.
And is it not fair to say that this council can refer back to planning and zoning?
Yes, sir. I mean, Planning and Zoning Commission is a recommending body, has no authority on its own. Its charge is to hold a public hearing, consider any proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance. It can do it on its own initiative. It can do it by referral from the city council. It can do it by an application from the property owner, which is the case here. City council, and it's not unusual. It hasn't, I can't recall that it's been done at this city council, but it's not unusual for city councils to refer matters back to Planning Commission for further study. I think the county council, for example, is doing that right now with the medical marijuana zoning ordinance in St. Louis County. So there's certainly nothing in the city's charter or code that prohibits council from sending it back. And so, yeah, I think if 5 council members elect to refer it back to the Planning Commission, that's permissible. Then what would take place is if the planning, once you would send it back to the Planning Commission, they reconsider it, they come back with a recommendation, either favorable or unfavorable. And then my recommendation has been, based on the language in the charter and the code, that we would hold another public hearing here at the city council based upon the new, whether it's the same or a different recommendation from Planning Commission, and then move forward with respect to the bill.
Very good. We'll open it up to discussion and comments. Councilmember Fitch.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I was wondering the reason why we could send this back. I don't believe in all the time I've been on council we ever sent an issue back to planning and zoning to get a vote. I was told, I know several times, and I don't know where it came from. I didn't hear about this going back to council until today. Your 2 councilmen knew nothing about this until today. So I'm sorry, I'm not up to snuff tonight, but I've never seen it go back. You're going to get more people on the board, and it's my feeling that it's not the right thing to do. And the reason I say that, the charter plainly says how you handle something. And this thing is, as the attorney said, it's in our hands. But we have never done that before, and it's surprising to me that it's being done now. And right now, go ahead, and I'll yield the floor right now, because I haven't.
Okay, take a drink of water there. Councilmember Abrams.
Yeah, I don't think there has ever been 13 members on planning and zoning. And I don't know if any of the others remember it, but I think when our charter was done in 66 and became effective, I think in 67, there was not 13 members appointed to there then. And I think it's only fair to, since the petitioner thought it had passed, planning and zoning when he left there, it seems like it's a fair way to do it, since this issue did not come up till after they took their vote. Now, if this was known before, it should have been brought to the attention of the city. But, this didn't come up before they took their vote. So I think that's the only fair way for us as a council to settle this issue, and then, then we can move forward with whatever the, recommendation is. Because we would still, even when it came back to us, we'd still have to vote on it, so. But that only seems fair.
Councilmember Satel.
Yes, I don't see any changes in the design where substantially needs to go back. I know we did make a second hearing and stuff like that when there was a new design for the Arbor Glen, because there was a cul-de-sac now, and so you thought to be appropriate either to send it back to planning and zoning or have at least another public hearing. So we did have another public hearing and postpone it because there was a design change. I don't see a design change or anything on it that makes it to where the same current 7 people have any kind of decision to make a different vote based on no changes. I mean, to keep sending it back multiple times just to try to persuade somebody to change their vote. Now, maybe we've got a different slate. I think it's our job to vote like it is, and if it fails one way, they come back 6 months from now, which is what the process like Mr. Fetch talked about. There's a process that if it passes, it passes. If it fails, they resubmit it with all new stuff, but they have to wait 6 months. Isn't that the process?
Yes, if it were to fail, they would have to, unless it's a substantially different application, they'd have to wait 6 months to reapply.
And I haven't seen any kind of new drawing saying there's a new drawing, or that there's going to be a 2-story building, and even though we're approving that, I guess we could say, oh, it's only going to be limited to a 1-story. We can make an amendment to that, because some people brought up about a 2-story building just tonight, when they're only planning on building a 1-story building. So I'm just wondering why we need to send it back just to try to change someone's vote when it is supposed to be coming to council making the final decision. However we vote, however we vote. I mean, I haven't even decided which way I'm voting for it, one way or the other yet, because I'd like to see more information about it yet. So, and we really won't be voting on it tonight, right? Because we don't have a full council. Is that correct anyway? Since Drew's not here?
This is a motion to re-refer, so that does get voted on tonight.
That part would get referred, but if it doesn't and it fails motion, then it goes, moves
All it can
forward.
be brought back is, it's already been introduced. It was introduced at the last
Okay, so it's already
meeting.
first reading, so it
Right.
can pass,
So-
it can go either direction with just 7 of us here tonight then.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, I guess when this was discussed earlier, I could have went either way on going back to planning and zoning, but I'm not getting a real good feeling about going back to them. I know I hate to go back on, directions, but I don't feel right. It's the whole reason we're going back to planning and zoning is to try to change the vote here, so we can get enough, so we can lower the number of people that have to vote. And, there's a chance it won't pass tonight with the way it's set up with the help me out here, the
Supermajority.
Supermajority,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you. So I don't know, I'm having a bad feeling going back on the planning and zoning just to get a change in vote so we can pass this with lesser people, where it has a better chance of passing, where, they voted on it. I mean, the 7 people did look at it, and like Bob said, what's going to change? So, I'm sort of in conflict here on making the decision to go back to planning and zoning. So that's all I have.
Councilmember Hine.
Yes, if it goes back to planning and zoning, am I understanding whatever members are there at the meeting that night will be available to vote, or will it be the same original 7 members that will vote on it again?
No, it's the existing commission that would be there that night.
Who's ever on the commission.
So you've appointed 1 or 2 additional ones since then. I just don't see where that's fair.
Councilmember Norris.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment about the amount. I said I was on planning and zoning 20 years ago, and there was not 13 people, and this is what's floored me about this majority. We've never had that many people, and I don't understand why it went back and forth and made this big issue. But Also, we can't vote tonight anyway, because I would feel that Purcell is not here.
Councilmember Grimmer.
I'd like to see it go back to planning and zoning simply because I think there's been a lot of distortion. I think the council, the members of this council are aware of it. I had one of my constituents astutely noticed that there's been a lot of false information put out about this, a lot of false information circulated. I'd like the people to take a look at it. I also recall that one of the planning and zoning members who voted on it was confused on the vote. Didn't understand the motion. And accordingly, if he had the chance, would have changed his vote accordingly. So I'd like planning and zoning to take a look at this, if nothing else, just to clarify some issues and to put the correct information out. There's been information alleged that we're going to approve a two-story building, which is not true. There's all kinds of things about flooding Harmony Lane, which is totally not true. I mean, these projects have to go through the approval of MSD. They're not going to approve anything like that. So there's a lot of distortion out there. I'd like for some people to take a good, close look at this and come out with the truth, and let's consider it accordingly.
Councilmember Fletch.
Yes, sir. Couple more comments. When I said previously that I had heard that a statement that we could send it back to planning and zoning, that's when you would have had a major change in the bill, such as we had on the other subdivision up the street from PP Road. That was a major change. That could have went back to the planning and zoning for another vote and let them know and approve that change, because it was in the content of the bill. This is in the content of the amount of people, and that's what I think is horrible about wanting to send it back, is it's not anything to do with the bill. It's got to do with the amount of people that voted on it, and as Scott pointed out, trying to get a vote to pass the thing. We don't know if it will or it won't, but I think that's wrong. And another thing about what the petitioner could do, and this is in the charter, you got to read that charter and know what's going on in it. And the charter does say that if it's defeated, you need 6 votes to bring it. 6 months before you can bring it back. But the gentleman could withdraw the thing and resubmit it tomorrow. Is that not right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
He could resubmit it tomorrow and go through planning and zoning that way. But no, what we're doing is saying, oh, don't do that. We'll take it this way and help you out. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Abram.
Yeah, the reason we're sending it back really is because of all the mix-up and all that. And the person that brought this up after the meeting was at the meeting, and if it was known to him all those years, why didn't he bring that up way before now? We've been, planning and zoning's been going by the vote of, the quorum, how many's there. And that was never brought up by one of our council people. It was brought up after this one at planning and zoning, right out there in the hall. So I think that was, was unfair to the city. It should have been brought up a long time ago if he knew that was the way it was. But it's also unfair to the petitioner that he thought it passed. And then he finds out later, no, it didn't pass. Plus, like Ferg said, or not Ferg, Jerry, there's been a lot of misinformation put out there. The 2-story building was the last thing that came to us, and the people from that area was up here like they are now, and we turned it down because it was a 2-story, and they want residential in there. Residential would bring a lot more traffic in and out for 7 days a week than a dentist office that's going to be open 4 days a week and a half a day on, one Saturday.
Let's keep it to the issue.
So.
Hold on. Let's keep quorum here. Stay the focus on it.
The misinformation that's been put out there, I think that is another reason why we should send it back and give it a fair chance for this petitioner.
Councilmember Satel.
Yeah, one last thing there. Anyway, right now requires 6 positive votes because of how it is, and there happens to only be 7 of us here tonight to get the vote. You know, if it goes back there and comes back, then, you know, if they do approve, then it requires only 4 of us because, at minimum, because then the mayor can break the tie and get the 5th vote. I think we should go ahead, I mean, even though it could be 5 of us, it's still 5 positive votes. I think the appropriate thing, instead of sending us tonight back to planning and zoning, is to table it, since we don't have all 8 of us here, since Drew's not here to vote, cast a vote at the same thing, to send it back, because it does change the power of all of our votes. And I think if we're going to vote on this to send it back, all 8 of us should be here. So I'd like to table this to the next meeting when all 8 of us are here.
Is that in form of a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second? You lack a second, so
That's fine.
by defeat. Councilmember Hine.
Yes, I want to make a point here too, and the mayor explained to me tonight he had a death in the family, but I didn't find out about this until last night, and I found out through another council member, and he was contacted by the mayor. I'm assuming everybody else was contacted by the mayor except myself and Mr. Fetch. And I don't know if we would have been contacted before tonight unless I was told by another council member what was possibly going to go on tonight. And I don't care for that. And, you know, it is what it is, but I think the vote should remain how it stood from the beginning.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, I guess a couple weeks ago, I could have voted for or against. I think it's a good idea to have the dentist office there, but then again, what I'm looking at and my viewpoint is, hey, we've got 2 councilmen that are in their ward asking us not to vote on this. We've got 100 people, well, whatever, 50, 60 people from the neighborhood asking us not to vote on it. That's what I have to think of when I try to make a decision on how to vote. So, you know, I'm feeling, you know, okay, and then let's go a little bit further. I feel, you know, we didn't get support in our ward for some of the things we wanted. And, you know, I wish I had some support, and I feel as though I should support these guys. We've had commercial that wanted to move into our neighborhood, and we kiboshed it. You know, I don't want commercial right next door to me, you know, if I don't have it now, if there's residential. I sympathize with them, and I think they, you know, it's residential now. Why are we changing it to not, you know, to business? So that's just my feeling, you know. Before then, you know, like I say, I could go either way. It'd be a business there, it'd be probably a nice business, and, you know, I don't have a problem with that, but there's a lot of people, and the councilmen of that ward are asking us not to vote for this, and, you know, there's something to be said for that. I wish I would get some support, or we would get support sometimes when we want it, and sometimes we get the support, sometimes we don't, so that's all I have to say.
Councilmember Fetch.
Yes, sir. I was referred to as knowing about that procedure and not letting anybody know. Well, I believe that majority of the people have been on this council long enough that they should be looking at this charter and know what's in it and follow them steps and be prepared to take action the way the charter is written. So it's not something that I don't feel like I have to educate someone that's been on council a heck of a long time and didn't know that. And then but there was one thing that was correct, and that is we haven't had 13, but we had 11 many times. And when we had 11, we needed 7 votes. I always said to people that called me about being for or against something, if you want to defeat anything that comes in on zoning, you have to go and defeat it at planning and zoning. That's been a statement I made, because that is the big difference that was explained earlier. It now takes 6 votes to pass here, where if it passed because it was defeated by the planning and zoning. It didn't read that way, but that's what happened. And it wasn't something I concocted. It was something that's in the, that I thought was in the charter, and it is in the charter. What, is it a simple vote tonight on this? Is that-
Simple vote.
Pardon me?
Simple vote of the people here, it's
Simple
council.
vote, okay.
Councilmember Abrams.
I just want, he's right. You know, most people, as council people, should know what the charter says. My issue is that he was at this planning and zoning meeting, and then after they took their vote, then he brought it up out in the hall. Well, I think they needed more votes because, you know, they're supposed to be there. Why do that? That doesn't look good, I don't think, for a councilman to do that. If he knows that charter is so good, and he knew this before, I think he should have brought that up. Because we've been doing planning and zoning like this, you know, forever. And, yeah, he's right. Everybody should know this charter. But he's also, I think, was wrong when he brought it up. He should have brought it up earlier, the issue, when we had other planning and zoning issues come before us. And he didn't bring that up then. So, you know, I just think that, you know, that this is a fair thing to do because of all the issues and the commotion with it. And, you know, and the people that attended the planning and zoning meeting did not know that planning and zoning does not discuss, they wanted them to answer those questions, but they did not know that planning and zoning does not discuss the issues. It's presented by Zach, and then the petitioner presents his, and then they make their decisions. So that part about no discussion at planning and zoning, that wasn't wrong. They did the right thing. They did not discuss it.
Correct. Councilmember Hine.
Okay, I think the bottom line at the planning and zoning meeting, I have a lot of respect for Mr. Buckheit, he's the chairman, but the commission members should have been educated beforehand on what vote was required, and they weren't. And I don't know if it's because he didn't know it, but the mayor, at the beginning of our council meetings, if somebody's missing, if a council member isn't present, he'll tell the constituents here that we can't take up and adopt an ordinance with only 7 council members. We can't have a second reading. So something similar to that should have been presented to the commission members before they voted or at the beginning of the commission meeting. Thank you.
Councilmember Grimmer.
Well, I think we're getting hung up on a technicality. It's the technicality that has altered the vote or the number of votes that's going to take this to pass. And what I think we're sending it back to a more full-bodied members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We correct that technicality and send it back, let them look at it, and let them vote on it. They could vote it down. Who knows? You know, there's a few more members, but we're correcting the technicality that's causing to affect the vote. So that's what we're doing, is correcting a problem. Now, it's coincidence or whatever you want to call it that it was brought to our attention just at the time when this votes, and I'm not going to cast any dispersions on anybody for the timing or anything, but it is what it is, and I think by doing it this way, we're going to correct that technicality that's causing the issue with the number of votes that we have to have. So I would be in favor of letting it be thoroughly examined at the revised planning and zoning, let them take a look at it. Now we've got the number of people on there that will correct the number of votes that will dictate how many votes it's going to take to get through this council to pass it. And that's the correct way of doing it. We're just correcting a mistake, maybe an oversight on our part that was brought to our attention. And we're making that correction now. This is what we're doing.
Very good. Councilmember Abrams.
Yeah, I just have one thing to say. Mr. Hine just said that, you know, the commission and the chairman should have been, you know, filled in on this. Well, how could they be filled in on it when we've been doing it that way for years, and somebody that knew this waited till after the meeting to say, well, that was wrong out in the hall. So that, that's why they weren't filled in on this. It was done, I think, I don't know, but we gotta be fair, I think, about it, like Jerry said, and, get this settled.
Councilmember Satel.
Well, this brings up other issues such as the Arbor Glen PUD that had decisions on how they voted also. They could have also went back to planning and zoning where they got 7 votes for this, but then they only got a 5-2 when it was about approving the plan. Well, the reason they did that, because they didn't like the plan with the houses being 15 feet from the sidewalk. Not understanding how valuable their vote is, okay? So of just that one vote. Are we going to send everything back to planning and zoning just because all 8 of us don't agree on how it turned out?
Different issue on that one, Councilmember Satel, and that was explained to you at the last meeting. Councilmember Fetch.
I just wanted to comment on another referral to me. I've been told by the person that made that statement, time and time again, when I've been seen at a planning and zoning meeting, you ain't supposed to talk at the planning and zoning meeting. How many other council people have been there? How much criticism has Bob Satel got because he stood up and talked? And then you sit here and tell me I should have been there to do it? I don't believe so, Mrs. Abram.
No, I'm saying you should have said something before.
Hold on. We need to keep this civil.
I agree.
And I think we need to take the vote right now.
Okay, I agree, sir.
All right. So the motion is to resubmit this proposal back to planning and zoning. That's the issue that's on the table right now. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Hine?
Nay.
Mrs. Norris? Aye. Mr. Purcell?
He's not.
Mr. Sittell?
Nay.
Mr. Zimmer?
Nay.
Mrs. Abram?
Aye.
Mr. Fetch?
Nay.
Mr. Grimmer?
Aye.
3 ayes and 4 nays.
By your vote of 3 to 4, you have defeated the motion to resubmit. So the issue is back now. You did vote to take it off the table.
Right, and now I'd like to make a motion to table it.
Second.
So we have a full council.
Motion's made and seconded to table. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
For the okay. Still passes on a 6 to 1 vote. For the benefit of the audience.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Oh, recount?
This is the table.
2. All right, the clerk will call the roll.
What are we voting on?
The vote is to table.
We have all years here.
Mrs. Norris? Aye. Mr. Sittell?
Aye.
Mr. Zimmer?
Nay.
Mrs. Abram?
Aye.
Mr. Fetch?
Nay.
Mr. Grimmer?
Aye.
Mr. Hine?
Nay.
4 ayes and 3 nays.
By your vote of 4 to 3, you have approved tabling this motion for the benefit of the audience and the residents. By tabling, it means it goes to the next council meeting. Then it comes up for another vote when everybody's here once again. So it's kind of put on freeze. Does everybody understand? Now, we're not going to take any questions. No. You had the chance, and we're just moving forward. So does everybody understand? It's been tabled. All right, moving on to Bill 6210, petition to amend sections of the Bridgeton zoning ordinance for definitions and regulations to medicinal marijuana facilities in the city of Bridgeton. Councilmember Abram.
Move for second reading of bill number 6210.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for second reading of Bill 6210. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Councilmember Abram.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bridgeton, Missouri, amending Chapter 410 of the Bridgeton Code of Ordinances, creating definitions for medical marijuana facilities, and providing zoning regulations therefore.
Second.
Motions, well, you need to put it in the form of a motion for Bill 6210 to become ordinance.
This is the second reading.
I have it. Well, that was my second, okay.
You already seconded
Bill
it and
number
approved. It's down for third reading.
6210 become ordinance number what?
19-12. Second.
Motion's made and seconded for Bill 6210 to become ordinance 19-12. Now, Councilmember Abram.
Yes, well, I think that the whole council should know why we're doing this. It was something that we needed to do, and I think that Zach and Mr. Lennon-Broker, or whoever, I think they did a good job on this. So unless somebody has some questions, I move approval.
Comments or questions? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Sattel?
Aye.
Mr. Zimmer?
Aye.
Mrs. Abram?
Aye.
Mr. Fetch?
Aye.
Mr. Grimmer?
Aye.
Mr. Hahn?
Aye.
Mrs. Norris? Aye.
By your vote of 7-0, you've approved Bill number 6210 to become ordinance 19-12. Consideration of new bills. Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes, move for the first reading of Bill 6211.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for first reading of Bill 6211. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bridgeton, Missouri, readopting sections 105.500 through 105.540 of the City of Bridgeton Code of Ordinances relating to the conflicts of interest and financial disclosure. Move to table.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for tabling of Bill 6211. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries. Councilmember Abram, Bill 6212.
Move for first reading of Bill 6212.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for first reading of Bill 6212.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bridgeton, Missouri, application number 19-PZ-08, to rezone approximately 6.03 acres of land located at 3170 PP Road from R2 Single Family Dwelling District to PUD Planned Single Family Residential Unit Development to allow for a 24-lot detached single-family development. Move to table.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for tabling of Bill 6212. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries. Councilmember Abram, Bill 6213.
Move for first reading of Bill 6213.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for a first reading of Bill 6213.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bridgeton, Missouri, application number 19-PC-10, which amends the Bridgeton zoning ordinance, Appendix 4-1, Planned Commercial District, B5R, 4530 North Lindbergh Boulevard, to allow automobile parking lots and garages as a permitted land use with a special use permit. Move to table.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for tabling of Bill 6213. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries. We are down to discussion items. Councilmember Grimmer.
Yes, if I could back up just a little bit, I know that item number 10 on our agenda was we moved to table it. I would like to just say for the newly appointed Stormwater Committee, and that would be from Ward 4, Councilwoman Norris, from Ward 3, Councilman Hine, from Ward 2, myself, and from Ward 1, Bob Sattel. Gentlemen, could we meet at 5:30 on the, prior to the next council meeting, which I believe would be on the 21st?
That works.
5:30 up here, and we can get that conference room back there. Does that work for everybody?
Good.
Okay, good, then we'll do that, and we'll forward our recommendation. Okay, good, thank you. Okay, we move on to item 11, and that was increased security. I believe at the last meeting, Councilman Hine brought this issue forward, and Councilman Hine, I want to thank you. It's an issue in the world we live in, that we have to look at things like this now in a more critical manner than we had to in the past. I would want to say that as a result of that, we did some investment, and I say we had some conferences with the city manager and the police chief, and we reviewed some of the security procedures that we now have in place, and there was also some options discussed. Because of the sensitive nature of those options, we are going to have a private conference with each one of the council members. The city manager will do that, and we will consider our options on the security accordingly. But again, those are things we just generally cannot discuss for obvious reasons in a public forum. So, with that, I beg your, I guess, condolences in the fact that we have to discuss this privately, and we'll come to a consensus among ourselves on what we want to do. On that. So do we agree on that as a council to handle it that way?
Everybody all right with that?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right, very well. Moving on to...
Wait a minute. Councilmember Hine has a question.
So, are we still going to have costs presented to us on what it would take to man the metal detector?
I think that that information will be made available to us, and then we'll make a decision accordingly. But again, it's just something we can't generally, because we would get into other areas inevitably. So we have to do it among ourselves, okay? To maintain,
Also, I want to say, possibly tonight, if we had the metal detector, 3 officers might have been required, but most council meetings, I can't see 3 officers being required to man the metal detector and have people enter through. And again, I want to say that I think my life is just as important as Judge LaRue's life. Just want to make that comment. Thank you.
That was a little bit of an inappropriate comment.
Yeah.
That's not a place for that to come up. We're not here judging everybody's life. All right, moving on. Workers' compensation.
Item number 12, and again, as another discussion item, I would like to refer to our city manager, who is going to present us with the options necessary for us to make a further consideration of that. So, Mr. Lookout, if you will, please.
Thank you, Councilmember Grimmer. I've been in touch with the representative for the city's workers' comp and liability trust, and we've talked, and he's assured me that the council, in doing the work of the city, is covered under workers' comp if there's any injuries while doing the city's business. So that's covered. It's not in a policy, but it's per state statute that you all would be covered under the workers' comp plan, and that includes expenses and any payment of any lost stipend that the city receives from the council, from the city. Any questions on that?
Councilmember Grimmer.
Yes, I do have a question. As an example, Councilwoman Norris and I were out looking at a piece of property, the Bridgeport stormwater thing. If something would have happened when we were walking through that yard or something like that, would coverage, since that clearly is city, would the coverage extend under those circumstances?
My understanding is that it would, because you were there doing the work of the city.
Okay.
As a council member.
2 or more. Okay.
Thank you.
As it relates, the council wanted us to look into...
Go ahead. Councilmember Urban, was your question on that, or is it?
I don't know what he's going to say. Mr. Hine also wanted life insurance.
Yeah, he's getting ready to go into that.
Yes.
Okay.
So, administration has done the research. The city currently has our group plan for full-time employees with The Standard, which is the name of the company. We contacted them, and they would create a new class for the elected officials, and we've included all of the elected officials, so a council, the mayor, and the judge would be included in that. And of course, what we received was, because it's under the umbrella of the city's larger group plan, and we did a double of every elected official's stipend that they receive, so the policy would be for that. Of course, it would be similar to the full-time employees plan, and that is, once an employee turns 65, there is a reduction of that amount. And I do have a memo that kind of lays it all out, and it provides it for each council member. So again, we would be covered under the city's group plan, but the elected officials would be a different class, and it would be just the elected officials under that 10-member group class. So I've got the memo, and the premium for all of the elected officials would be approximately $40 a month for everybody. But of course, they were good rates because we've got a very large group plan.
Questions? Councilmember Norris?
Back to the workers' comp, Mr. Bookout.
Yes, ma'am.
If we would be, because I do have something that a constituent asked me to look at something on his property, would I need to call you to let you know I'm going someplace?
No, that would not be necessary.
Okay. And on this life insurance, once we're off, we'd be, if we're not reelected, we're not covered.
The policy would be canceled once you leave office, yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Abram?
Well, I just want to say that, we are not employees of the city. And I do not think that we should have any kind of insurance. Now, maybe like you said, if we're on the job or out, checking something and get hurt, that's an automatic thing already anyway, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so we would have that. But like I said, we are not, I don't even know why this is brought up for us to have life insurance and all this. Most of us have our own insurance, and, I just don't think we're employees, and I don't think it's necessary for us to have this. I just think, I didn't run for insurance. I, ran because I felt that I could do some good in the city. And, yes, I don't think that I'm against it.
Councilmember Sattel?
Yes, is this something we could actually discuss and put into effect at budget time, or is that something, I'm just kind of implement time? Did you hear about it? Did they say
It could
anything
be
about
a recommendation, if you were thinking of it, to add it to the budget.
Right, I mean, nothing that we kick in the middle of summer here right now, but it's something we could sit there and add at budget time in November, correct? Starting January 1?
In theory, can't you, Mr. Bookout, I guess, if council wanted to approve something, it could start as soon as the paperwork's finished.
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I don't see no rush on it, but I think it's something as minimal as that is, I think it's something, for $40 a month, I think it's something we should be considering, especially, we're talking about security at the same time, in the same meeting here, and he's like, like Randy said, what's our lives worth? It's like, I just think it's the right thing to do for a small amount, for that small amount. Thank you.
Councilmember Zimmer?
Just a question. So we were already covered on workers' comp?
Correct.
Good. Thank you.
Councilmember Grimmer?
Well, I have to agree with Councilwoman Abram. I never signed up for this to be a benefit plan for us, and $440 a piece times 10, that's what's that, almost $4,800 a year, $5,000 a year for life insurance.
You're wrong.
I mean, my gosh.
Hold on.
What are we doing here? Are we here for a benefit plan for us to, I think all of us can afford our own life insurance. And we shouldn't be looking at the city to, just shovel benefits on us. We're here for service, not to see what we can wring out of the city. I think it's extremely fortunate that the city provides us a very, very generous stipend for our services. My wife accuses me of working cheap sometimes because I do put in a few hours, as I'm sure the rest of us do. But on the other hand, we get benefits, we get travel, we get expenses paid for conferences, all kinds of things that the city does for us. But just to go out and say, oh, we should have this and that, it's not necessary. I just don't think that. I think we can stand on our own 2 feet, and if somebody volunteers for service, it shouldn't be for their own benefit. I think we have plenty of benefits right now, and this is just another $5,000 that I don't think is necessary.
Councilmember Hine?
I understood it to be $40 total.
For all 9 people?
Not per person.
That's only...
Yes, just for clarification, it's $40 for all 10 per month.
Oh,
Per month.
So,
Yeah.
Per person.
It's
It's less than $500.
Okay. All right, some math on my bad. But, again, I don't care if it's almost free.
Councilmember Hine has the floor.
Okay, also, let me ask while I'm thinking of it, are we eligible to contribute to the 457B?
I would have to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I may, there's really two decisions that need to be made. The council needs to decide whenever you would like to make that decision, whether or not you want to allow the elected officials to receive the life insurance. And if the answer to that is yes, and you move forward, there needs to be a decision on how you would like to cover that, whether that's through the general fund or a direct withdrawal from each elected official's stipend.
I don't either.
Councilmember Norris.
What did you say about the age on the life insurance? Didn't you bring up something about 65?
I did.
That's for those of you over 65.
Hold on, let him go, let him explain.
So each policy would be double your stipend, what you receive. So each council member receives $6,000. The policy would be for 12. And this is just like the full-time employees. Once you reach 65, that stair steps down in terms of what you would receive, and it stair steps down to 35% of what your full payout would be.
Okay. Hell.
Got it?
Yeah.
Councilmember Fitch.
Are we talking about, we're talking about life insurance? I can't hear good. When I went to the doctor today, she stuck that thing and looked through my, she said she can't see through because there's water in my ear. I said, what? But anyhow, I couldn't hear half of what is being said, but are we going to vote? Do we have to vote on this?
Well, we need direction from the council as to where they want to go. One is if you want to provide, and then secondly is how you finance it. Either taking it, as Mr. Bookout said, either through the general fund, which kind of relates back to Mr. Satel's comment about waiting until budget time, or to take it out of the stipend that's paid to the individual council members.
Okay, that's for life insurance.
That's for life insurance.
Now, the other...
You're covered under workers' comp. There's nothing you have to do. That's,
we have
you already have it.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, I'm getting pretty tired. Can we talk about this in June during budget time, or is this been a long night, or whatever, you know, or November rather?
Budget, budget time comes up at the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, I know. Well, we have an intermediate, yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right. That's fine if everybody wants to postpone. I have 3 more lights, so let me get to those. Councilmember Abram?
Do you want a census of whether we want this or not?
You know,
Tonight?
yeah, if you want to proceed on, you need to let staff know so that we can start preparing it.
Okay, I don't want any of it.
Okay.
None of it.
We got that point.
So, I'm just...
Councilmember Norris.
Well, that was what I was going to say. So that's $480 we're going to have to take out of somebody else's budget. And I don't think that's right. I have my own life insurance policy, so, which is a lot more than this. So, anyway, and I don't want it out of my stipend. So is it one for all or all for none?
Well, because we're under the city's group plan, so typically if you're going for a group plan, you need a minimum of 10, which is what we've got. But because you're covered under the full group plan, if 8 or 9 wanted to do it, we could still do that.
I'd like to postpone it till budget time, please.
Second.
I can't believe we're even talking.
All right, motion's made and seconded to postpone to budget. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? So this motion will be tabled, or this item will be tabled until we bring up the 2020 budget later in the year. All right? Moving on. Attorney's report.
I have nothing else tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Council communications. Councilmember Grimmer.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Councilmember Satel.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, Susan Tellman came and visited me, or talked to me about this noise ordinance. I'd be happy to get together with the staff or even headed a committee on doing this. I don't think it needs, it's only 2 paragraphs, but the ordinance is, it's real vague and it's hard to read and there's no grip in it. It's just a garbage 2 paragraphs on peace disturbance and on the noise ordinance. And I think it would be good if we did rewrite it so the police would have something to bite their teeth into, or the attorney when you take it to court for, citing these people. So I'll be glad to spend time with anybody if they want to do it, or committee. So that's all I had.
Very good.
If you want to.
Councilmember Norris.
Thank you. I have something, you know that. Well, I said I'm going along with the peace disturbance. I just wanted, this a public service announcement. I would like to remind all the dog owners in Bridgeton, there's 3 dogs per resident, and there's no boarding. And then I also would like to, would you please be courteous to your neighbors and bring in your garbage cans from the curb? When you're retired, you can see how many rules are being broken. And also I attended the second public meeting regarding Matthews Park. It was a very good presentation. I want to thank the Director Brandon and Assistant Director Vicky for the great ideas. We'll be presenting the plans to St. Louis County for the grant application. And I do hope my fellow council members will look at the Bridgeport residents' stormwater with solving a problem that has frustrated and caused much distress to our resident. Not a problem when the home was new in 1994 for 10 years, and in 2004 it got worse. The erosion is moving to the next neighbors. This is a small amount compared to some of the other work that we've done over the years. Let's do this, and thanks to the audience for attending.
Councilmember Abram.
Drew, what the hell is wrong with you?
Councilmember Abram.
I'm just laughing at me.
Yeah, I have some communications. Mr. Howland stood up here, and I want him to know, he stood up here and said that we were elected by them, and we need to listen to them. We were elected by a lot of residents in each ward, and we represent basically the city. But I was elected to make the best decision that I could for the city and the residents. Not to, because a few residents, 50 come up here or whatever, is against this, and so, okay, I'm going to vote against it because these people don't want it and they may not vote for me next time. Well, I want Mr. Howland to know that I vote based on what I feel is best, not because of what any of these residents out here are saying. Maybe I'm a man, got kahunas to speak up, but I'm sorry. Also, Kathy McGinty said that he bought the property. I think he has a contingent contract on there. He did not buy the property. Miss Fisher wants residential there. She called my house, told me that she's very well educated and has a lot of money. Well, then I would say buy that property if you don't want anything else to go there. And Scott, you misunderstood what I said about the water problems. We're not engineers. I didn't say that we should, make that decision. I said that it should be sent to the professionals that know what they're doing, engineering. And then they can tell us if we, if it's a big enough problem that we should fix it. So I didn't say that we should make that decision. Well, in the long run we will, but it would come from engineering whether or not to, discuss it or bring it to the table. So. I think I about covered everything that I have to say tonight, and
very good. Councilmember Hine.
Thank you. Thanks for constituents for being here, the ones that are left. Just a comment about the rezoning the property there. I've called twice, once last week, once this week, to the realtor, Tim Lawler, the representative. Have not received a call back. I don't know how they expect to sell the property if they don't return phone calls. For the chief, I was curious how many arrests were made for fireworks being discharged illegally. And then I noticed a new, I'm guessing it's new, maybe we got it through asset forfeiture of F-150 four-door crew cab pickup truck. If we didn't get it through asset forfeiture, was that in our 2019 budget? Okay, so that's one of the 4 vehicles that we approved, and for a total of $133,000. I'm curious how the hotel motel tax is going. I guess down. I was gonna see if we could get a estimate on the percentage that it's gone down this year compared to last year. And then for Brendan, how many of our parks have tennis courts? And then after voting yesterday, I had 2 constituents approach me. I didn't know either one of them. The first one was suggesting that we recognize Mrs. Sicking for her efforts in the city, and I told them that we've tried to do that numerous times, and she refuses because it started out as a Lenten obligation, and she feels like it would be defeating her purpose. And then the second one, I guess, I told him I'd bring this up to Brendan at the council meeting. He suggested that TV stations down in the workout area be turned to channels that are, I guess, more basic and not so politically oriented. And I asked him his name before I left him, and he said John House. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Put on
Councilmember Fetch.
Street.
All right?
Yeah.
Sesame Street.
Just one thing I wanted to bring up, and I don't want to discuss it now, but maybe next meeting, I want to ask Brendan, what's the latest on the little cabin that was on that property?
I can address that issue in mind. I'll address it.
You going to address that? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I didn't mean to take it away from you.
No, that's fine.
I just heard a story about it, and I want to make sure that's true, and that'll be something I think to think about in the near future. Well,
sure.
Because when you did present it to us, we had to make some decision whether we wanted it or we didn't want it. And that's why I'm just wanting to know when we'll get the details of it.
Sure.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, department reports. Mr. Gunn on Public Works and Streets.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Chief?
Okay, I would be safe to say that there were probably 6 to 10 summonses issued for fireworks. A couple of them were actually after, as late as on the 8th of the 4th of July. That much I do know. The recruit that was in the academy has withdrawn his conditional job offer, so we are advertising for another police officer. I am short one, and that runs for another month. Well, not quite another month, about 3.5 weeks. On Saturday night, we assisted Maryland Heights. There was an article in the newspaper about 2 subjects taken into custody for getting in automobiles where a weapon was recovered. We assisted on that. So we are working diligently to try to get this issue resolved. That same group was out in Cottleville and O'Fallon later on from last weekend. So it's not just our issue, but please, if anybody talks about this, remind them to please take the valuables out of sight and lock the automobile. We had 2 in my neighborhood that were left unlocked with the keys in it, and the only reason they didn't get them very far is they couldn't figure out how to take the emergency brake off. So we're doing our best to try to get the word out to please lock these automobiles so we could use a little help. And lastly, we're going to be hosting a fundraiser event for Backstoppers tomorrow evening from 5 to 9:30 at Sports Cafe. Now, Backstoppers is the one that is actually putting this together, but since it is within the city of Bridgeton, we are the hosting agency. We will have the F-150 down there. That is to replace the Tahoe that is on its last leg. We've had it for a long time, and the graphics on the car has changed. We're pretty proud of that design. And when, not if, but when we get the cars that we've already ordered and when they get delivered, we are going to add a little color as recommended, and the blue is going to come back in that same fashion for the marking of the new cars. We're not going to remark everything in the fleet, but we are going to gradually introduce that graphic. It's the same style, it's just, frankly, it adds a little color, so.
Very good. Councilmember Hine, you had a question of the chief?
I'm assuming there's enough left in the budget to get the other 3 vehicles.
Yeah, we're in good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Brendan, Mr. Kane?
Just wanted to provide an update on the Riverwoods and Earth City Levee Trail. Went down yesterday to survey the site, and unfortunately there was, as you can imagine, a great deal of mud and different debris up on the trail. And they had just started to clear the trail off, and you kind of lose where the trail goes because at some points it's 3 or 4 feet deep of mud and muck down there. So, but we do fear that we lost a significant amount of the trail into the river. And so we're working with Great Rivers Greenway to see how they'd like to proceed as far as how much of it we want to leave accessible for the public. So we hope to have an update on that by the end of the week. And to answer Councilmember Hine, tennis courts, I know for a fact we have them at Bridgeway and BMAC. I'm not certain on Spanish Village. I can check on that and let you know tomorrow. And then as far as the Fox News, the gentleman did bring that to our attention. That was the channel he wasn't in favor of their views on the shootings, and we explained to him that if you'd like a different channel, we'd be more than happy to, just like any other person using the fitness center, we can change it to ESPN or MSNBC, CNN, whatever you'd like. And he was didn't believe that was the case. He thought that it was Fox News was set on the channels, and so yeah, I blamed it on the chief. But I answered it as best as I could for him.
Very good. Mr. Bookout?
I have nothing further.
Okay, I have 2 things. One, I'll address Councilmember Fetch, but first, we did have a meeting with the EPA director from Washington, D.C. He came into town about a week ago. He briefed us on where they were in terms of the cleanup of Westlake landfill, which is one of 2 that operate in the city. EPA, through the participating parties, which are 3 entities that will be funding this, have hired Jacobs Engineering, which is an international firm, to do the remediation work. They've changed the plan on it slightly in that they will not just excavate the entire Westlake landfill by scraping off. At one time it was 6 to 8 feet. They are going to try and pinpoint the hot spots, which would be the areas of most radioactive material that they've been able to detect, and they will dig down until they hit pay dirt, so to speak, on the hot spot. They'll dig deeper than 6 to 8 feet. So if it's 20 feet they need to go, they'll dig 20 feet. The other thing that was reinforced is that the material that's dug out will then be carted outside of the city of Bridgeton. So everything here that's radioactive gets taken out. The only downside on this is that it will take more time to do the engineering work, so it's probably 2 years down the road, and it will probably take in the neighborhood of 3.5 to 4 years to complete all the excavation on the site. So that's the update on the landfill from the regional, or not the regional, the director of EPA. In terms of Councilmember Fetch asked about the old structure. Earlier tonight we had the hearing on the rezoning at 3170 Fifi for a subdivision. The house on there was built around an old log cabin that preliminarily goes back to the early 1800s, maybe even 1790. It was part of what they called Fort McKay at the time. It wasn't really the fort like you think you see on TV with the post. It was basically an old log cabin in which there were portals carved so that they could stick the muskets out and defend themselves against intruders. That's the way they did it back in those days. Eventually, the house was encased by another structure, a bigger house, that dates to the Civil War, because there's most of the bricks that you see on that house date back to 1860. It's still in place. What we've got is the developer has been talking with us about trying to preserve at least the log cabin which is the actual logs themselves, which you can see inside the structure. Mr. Bookout and I took a tour of that. He will not, though, disassemble the logs. So, because of an individual I know that lives out in Wildwood and is with the Wildwood Historical Society, he is a contractor, he is willing to, when they excavate everything but the log cabin, to slide what they call a lowboy trailer, which is basically a flat trailer that you see a lot of material or machines that are hauled on, like these big bulldozers or front end loaders. He can slide that in under it if they can jack it up a little bit, and then he's willing to do that, pull it out in total, and then take it to a location. And what we're trying to do now is the location that we've picked is Matthews Park. So we would then pour a concrete pad down at Matthews Park and locate the structure there, because this would be the oldest facility or structure in the city of Bridgeton. A lot of people think it was the Payne Gentry house, but it's not. This one predates Payne Gentry by probably a good 50 to 60 years. So that's the intent. I've told the Historical Society and the Historical Commission officers that that's our plan for this. You know, we're fortunate in that we've got a contractor that's willing to do it at no cost to us. That, you know, thankfully we've got a few connections there that he's willing to do it, and this individual has a great deal of respect for historical structures throughout St. Louis County and is willing to do it. Councilmember Abram, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have one question. You said that no cost they were going to do it, but I was going to ask, why would we want another historical home in our city to maintain when Gentry cost enough? You know?
Well, this one, basically, what we're looking at is we would have to put the concrete pad down, but we would put it down, and then the Historical Commission, I've also found out there is the Bridgeton Historical Society, which the Historical Society also has its own bank account and money. That's not part of the city. So, quite potentially then, the Historical Society could take on the aspects of running it. It really wouldn't be something that's open constantly to the public, but you'd schedule it kind of similar to Payne Gentry. I'm not even looking potentially at, you know, lighting. I guess you could run electric out to it as part of the rehab of Matthews Park, but I think the biggest thing with it is it is probably the oldest structure in the city, and that would be the reason to preserve
And
it.
how long do you think it's going to take before it gets graffitied and messed up? It won't take long.
Well, hopefully not. You know, we're relying on the police department and the park rangers to make sure it doesn't. Unless there's further questions, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made, seconded to adjourn. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries. We are adjourned.